And a very good afternoon, good morning, everybody. This is Matt Lipson along with Elliot Sachs. It's another LMAT podcast. We are going to talk today about baseball, spring training. Baseball starts today. Well, it started yesterday officially with the Dodgers playing the Cubs out in Arizona, but it starts today in Florida with the Yankees taking on the Tampa Bay Rays at George Steinbrenner Stadium. And tomorrow the Mets will be playing the Houston Astros. Then we're going to talk a little bit about college basketball as we're racing towards the end of the season. It's the 20th, which means March 21st, which means March Madness is very close. And we'll finish with hockey, the Four Nations Hockey Cup, and we'll talk about that. So first things first. Good morning, Elliot. How are you today?
I'm good, Matt. Good morning, and I'm glad baseball's back. We're going to talk about a couple things, and why don't you start out with the Yankees? But I gotta mention something that happened in the Cubs Dodger game yesterday, and then we'll move on.
Okay, go ahead. You want to do that first? You want me to do
Oh
the
yeah. So yesterday, first game of first spring training game, Cubs play the Dodgers. They started early because they're going to be playing in Japan in a few weeks, so they gave them a little bit of a break and started early. So first inning, I'm watching, and the Cubs come up and they get no runs. And then the bottom of the first inning, history has been made. Cody Poteet, who was with the Yankees last year, he's now with the Cubs, throws the ball. The umpire calls it a ball. Cody Poteet puts his hand on his cap, which means nowadays I want a review of that. I believe that ball was a strike. Taps his hat. Umpire turns around, looks up at the press box. They said it's a strike. So they changed the call from a ball to a strike. So every team now in Major League Baseball has two challenges a game on any pitch. Now, the challenge can't come from the dugout. It
right.
has to come either from the catcher, the batter, or the pitcher. I'm learning all this yesterday, these new rules. So one of those three guys has to do the challenge. If somebody from the dugout says, hey, I want to challenge that, the umpire has to deny it. It has to come from either the catcher, the pitcher, or the batter. So they changed the call. And I gotta tell you, I like the way it did. It took 3 seconds. It's not like the NCAA basketball where it takes 5 minutes. It was very quick, painless, and because the Cubs challenge worked, they still keep their two challenges.
That's great.
So
The
I
only
just
problem with
wanted
that
to
whole
bring
thing is
that up.
that how many innings in a baseball game?
Nine.
Like, there should be two challenges an inning, not two challenges a game. How
Well,
many
I
pitches
think
do you
they're
throw in a
they're
baseball
rolling it
game?
out now.
You throw 130 pitches in a baseball game, and you only get to challenge two. That's stupid. I mean, that just I know they're just playing with it in spring training, and it's going to change, but minimum minimum two challenges an inning, especially took 3 seconds.
Yeah, it
You
took three
know,
seconds. The other thing too is Max Muncy apparently must be a chronic complainer about this stuff. So that Dave Roberts, the manager, told him, "You are not allowed to challenge." He's
only the
been
pitcher can
told
do it.
you
Only the
can't
pitcher can do it.
you
That's pretty
can't
good.
challenge.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good. But the breaking news in baseball this morning comes from Yankees general managing partner Hal Steinbrenner, and I'm going to read it specially. It's the alteration of the Yankee facial hair policy. In recent weeks, I have spoken to a large number of former and current Yankees, spanning several eras, to elicit their perspectives on our long-standing facial hair and grooming policy, and I appreciate their earnest and varied feedback. The most recent conversations are an extension of ongoing internal dialogue that dates back several years. Ultimately, the final decision rests with me, and after great consideration, we will be amending our expectations to allow our players and uniform personnel to have well-groomed beards moving forward. It is the appropriate time to move beyond the familiar comfort of our former policy. So, how about, to quote Mel Allen, how about that?
That's big
Unbelievable.
news.
The
Big
Yankees,
news.
who's going to be the first Yankee to grow a beard? And probably all of them. They're all going to grow. Maybe not. I don't see Garrett Cole in a beard. He's got a baby face, but
I don't see Aaron Judge either, but I could be wrong.
maybe a little average, maybe a little facial down the side. But Austin Wells definitely not. He's going to keep with the mustache because he looks like an '80s porn star with that. He's not going to change that. And but you know something, it's great and it makes me laugh. We joked about this before we went on air. We were talking about how Alex Verdugo was so happy to be a free agent that he escaped the Yankee hair policy. By the way, who's Alex Verdugo signed with?
He's a free agent.
Oh, okay, thank you. So, he's still looking, but now we can come back to the Yankees, right? No, we don't need it. But anyway, I think it's great. I don't ever remember any free agent signing with another team or any player that was being traded to the Yankees balking on the trade because they had to shave their beard. I mean, we can go back, and of course, everybody remembers Johnny Damon, who one year looked like a caveman, looked like the Geico guy in Boston, and the next year he was a clean cut guy, cut hair and everything. So I think it's great. I think it's great. I think it will be funny if whoever leads off for the Yankees today comes up with one of those, put on beards, but that won't happen because but they don't want to make fun of Al.
You brought up before we started doing the recording that back in the '80s, Don Mattingly, the one year he was basically told to cut his hair. It was so. I wonder if that'll happen in 2025 if somebody
No,
has shoulder length hair.
they'd file a grievance, and then Rob Manfred wouldn't know what to do with himself anyway, would pick the wrong thing. But no, that's not gonna happen. But the only thing of interest, a couple of interesting things on the New York side of baseball. On the Yankee side, first of all, Aaron Boone signed an extension yesterday, 2-year extension. Uh, Social media, from what I've read, seems to be a little bit mixed. And I mean, look, we have ripped Aaron Boone plenty here, and I guess Aaron Boone is a kind of manager that's going to continue to be ripped until he wins the last game of a baseball season. And I'm sorry, there's no other way to put it that way. But when you look at Aaron Boone's record and his record of success, he's a damn good manager, record-wise. So he deserves the extension. Um, Hopefully I mean, I guess it would be an upset if they don't win the American League East, and once they get into the playoffs, anything can happen. So we don't even go that far yet, and we're a few weeks away from our baseball predictions, which if they're anywhere like our football picks. Anyway,
Those
but
are for entertainment purposes only.
I
And
think it's great. I think it's a great move by the Yankees.
yeah, I mean, Aaron Boone, like you said, his regular season record is very good, very good. His playoff record, not so good.
Playoff record is one game under 500,
Yeah.
like, like
So,
22 and 23. So
but
he
the
should be
problem is how many rings has he won?
as many rings as Aaron Judge. So I mean,
Yeah.
look, I think it's a good move. I really do. And speaking of Aaron Judge, Boone also announced that Aaron Judge and Austin Wells will not be playing until March 1st. Uh, Probably just to actually not be playing for the first week. It'll probably be before March 1st. And the reason for that is just a little maintenance. You know, usually, the first game of the spring training season, you get all the stars out there, but he's not doing that way. One thing the Yankees will be doing today at home is they will be wearing their home pinstripe uniforms, and then they won't be wearing them again until they open up at home against the Brewers. So, but that's that. Marcus Stroman, remember him? He'll be starting.
Yeah.
He'll be starting today because Clark Schmidt has a little bit of backache. I don't know how, and I said to Adam, my son Adam, who is a weightlifter, I said, I think these injuries that are coming up in spring training are due to the excessive lifting that players do in the offseason. And he told me that what's his name, Giancarlo Stanton's elbow problems have nothing to do with lifting.
Hmm.
So I guess it just is a rest. So tennis elbow has nothing to do with lifting, but
Yeah.
it's amazing how these guys. I mean, when we were growing up, what was a lat? Nobody knew what a lat was.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting now, especially with pitchers. It's the injuries. I understand what the Yankees are doing with Judge and Austin Wells. They don't need him right now. Matter of fact, you know what? Not playing for a week, they're only going to miss 3 games because they're not going to take a bus ride to any of the away games. So they're going to miss the 3 games in Tampa. That's it.
No, and we'll certainly discuss the Yankees and the Mets, in depth going forward. But I think, and I'm not saying this is a sour grapes thing, because I think it's good for the Mets to have Juan Soto. I mean, it's good for them to have him. He's going to be great there. We'll get to the Mets in a minute. I think the Yankees are a better team right now. Uh,
Mhm. Yeah.
And my point is, I think the catcher this year is going to do better than the catcher last year, even though it's mostly Austin Wells. He's got a year under his belt.
Hmm.
Um, I think the pitching this year has to be better than last year because you added Max Fried. All right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, if Paul Goldschmidt has the exact same year that he had last year, this year, he's
Yeah.
better than the entire first baseman that played for the Yankees last year.
They've improved the first base. They've improved their starting pitching. They've improved their closer situation.
Mhm.
Although, I like Lou Weaver a lot, but you got to remember Clay Holmes was the closer for
First half of the
75%
year.
of the year.
Yeah.
So they've improved those three very key areas. They they did lose Soto, but they did pick up Cody Bellinger, who's not Juan Soto, but who's 85% of Juan
And not
Soto.
only that, but if you look at it this way, the Yankee defense, all right,
Yeah,
uh, I think Jason Dominguez will play well in left field as well as Alex Verdugo did. But the Yankees right fielder this year is better than last year's right fielder,
right.
right?
That's
Defense and offense.
that's correct.
The Yankees center fielder this year is definitely defensively better than last year's center fielder. I think Judge ranked like 28th or 29th as a center fielder. He played well, but and of course we spoke about this at the end of the season last year. He wore down.
He did.
Williams mentioned it. We all saw that he wore down. Cody Bellinger is not going to hit 40 home runs like Juan Soto did, although, he's got that Yankee Stadium swing, but he's not going to.
Yep.
He hits 30 home runs, we'll be thrilled,
Oh yeah, and he
and
could. He definitely
we'll
could.
be thrilled, and everything. And a little bit of a renaissance. Paul Goldschmidt, again, if he hits 25 home runs and knocks in 75 RBIs, okay.
Yeah.
You know, third base is a mess. Uh, unfortunately, DJ LeMay was such a nice guy that it hurts. But maybe there's something there. We'll have to see. But you know, we'll see what happens. I mean, it's still way too early to discuss it. On the Mets side of the token, no, they got Juan Soto. Juan Soto, number 22, always been number 22. Last year, Brett Beatty was number 22. So Juan Soto got in touch with Brett Beatty and said, I'd really like to have that number. Can I buy you something? What could you use? And Brett Beatty told him what he could use. And yesterday, Juan Soto delivered Brett Beatty a $92,000 truck. A
Yep.
truck. And the best part of that story is, as you said earlier, Brett Beatty's car had 150,000 miles on it. He's been using it since what, college or something?
High school.
High
He's had
school.
that car since high school.
Oh,
And I just looked it up for those who are keeping track at home. Brett Beatty will be wearing number 7 this season.
number 7.
Number 7.
Well, see that bugs me because that should be the next number retired by the Mets because Eddie Kramer should have had his number retired a while ago. But
Won't be
okay,
now.
no, no, no. Well, it won't be now. But so we start with baseball. We see what happens. The thing that bugs me about baseball, and we'll get into this in the coming weeks, is that yeah, you mentioned the Dodgers and the Cubs will be playing in
So
Tokyo, which is understandable since half the Dodgers lineup is from Japan. So
part of the Cubs too. You got Suzuki, you got Imanaga.
I guess this is just an old man talking, and I apologize, but baseball's supposed to start in Cincinnati. There's supposed to be a parade. They're supposed to be in convertibles waving at each other. And the first game of the year is supposed to be at whatever Cincinnati Stadium is called this week.
Great American Ballpark.
Yeah, I still think back to Crosley Field, but
And I'm thinking of Riverfront.
well, I'm a little older than you. It should be like that, on Monday, the Reds play somebody, and on Tuesday, everybody else plays. Now, that changed a long time ago when ESPN started and picked up, the games started 12 o'clock and play until 11 o'clock at night, and that's fine, because if you love baseball, you don't have a problem sitting in front of ESPN watching all these games, and that's great. Baseball should not start in Japan. I'm sorry. I,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I understand Rob Manfred will look for every cent he can market and everything he can possibly do.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, we'll accept it. Dodgers, Cubs, and they'll play. I think they play in a couple of weeks, 2 weeks, March 18th, I
They're
think.
playing the 18th and 19th, I believe.
And then they
Yeah.
come back. So if the Dodgers win the first 2 games, they've got an early lead in the pennant race, and You know, the
They'll be in first place for 2 weeks.
Cubbies will come back and be winless in the Central Division for a couple of weeks as well.
2 weeks.
But we'll see what happens. I mean, there's still some free agents out there. There's still some trading to be done. Vladimir Guerrero, February 18th was his deadline when he reported.
Yep.
The question is now, will they try to entice him during the season, even though he said no? Can they entice him during the season? He's looking at somewheres in the vicinity, they say, of $500 million. He's certainly not going to get the Juan Soto 760. He's looking at $500 million. He's a Canadian citizen. He loves Canada. Toronto hasn't been able to get anybody. There's talk about him wanting to go to Boston, uh, which doesn't make any sense to me because he's a first baseman and third baseman. They got plenty of first baseman and third baseman in Boston. And he said he wouldn't mind coming to the Yankees. And of course, Steve Cohen's going to be involved with him with the Mets. Is this guy a trade? Is this guy a trading deadline trading thing?
Well, it depends on how Toronto does, but at the All Star break, if they're in the hunt for a wild card, I would think they would keep hang on to it. But you got to be careful because you don't want to lose them and get nothing back. Too.
Well, you get the draft pick because they're going to certainly give him the qualifying offer. So they say that the draft pick really hurt Pete Alonso. The fact that the Mets gave Pete Alonso the qualifying offer scared away a lot of teams because they didn't want to give him that much. He wasn't worth as much because they had to include the draft pick. So
5, yeah.
now I would say Toronto's probably second or third best team in the American League right now.
Yeah.
So I figured Yankees, Baltimore, Toronto, or Yankees, Toronto, Baltimore.
Yeah,
But
they're second or third, right?
what about, I mean, Tampa Bay is expected to finish fifth in the division. Boston's the wild card. Boston, if Boston jumps up to be second or third in the division and come the trading deadline, it's not so much where you are in the division, it's where you are in the playoff race.
Right, right.
So I would say 10 games out of playoffs at the trade deadline is you got to jettison the guy. Because
I think you got to
somebody,
make a trade. You got to get somebody back.
look, if you're the Mets, right? If you're the Mets and you're fighting for the playoff position and you can pick up Guerrero, I mean, he's your DH, or you make Alonso. I mean, something.
You'll clear some space. You can get him into the lineup.
No, I was going to say you have a bunch of riches there. If the Yankees, no, I don't see the Yankees making that trade because they'll have Elbow Stanton over and playing DH. So they're not going to do that unless Goldschmidt's batting 172 at the time or something like that. Which I doubt's going to happen.
Yeah. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. played third base at one point.
They said he could play third base. Yeah, they said he could play.
Yes. If with the Yankees,
Yeah, I mean that's just like, but I don't know. And now they don't have to worry about him shaving his beard. So I mean, it's a possibility. But
yeah.
we got plenty of time to talk about that. We got as we
Before we leave baseball, though, there is one thing that we didn't talk about. Is just a note here that ESPN is ending their contract with Major League Baseball at the end of this season, 2025,
I saw that.
which is a shame. I mean, a lot of us, Peter Gammons, Tim Kirchin. I mean, there's just been a lot of history with Major League Baseball, 30 years of history probably with watching the MLB on ESPN. So I think
Where's
that's
ESPN going? Are they going to Fox? Are they going to TBS? I mean,
a lot of this is going to go to streaming, unfortunately. So we'll keep an eye on it, obviously, during the season as some news comes out. But ESPN did make that announcement, I guess, yesterday.
yesterday, yeah, I saw that. Again, everything is a money grab.
Yep.
Everything's a money grab. So I don't even know what to say about it. College basketball, we're not going to go crazy into it, but we're going to talk a few little things that we're getting down to the wire. The conferences are finishing up. We'll be getting into the conference championships in a couple of weeks, and selection Sunday, I believe, is
March 16th.
right, March 16th, and then of course chaos begins, is what as we refer to it as March Madness.
we'll
Yeah.
have our sheets of integrity. We'll be
Um,
talking about that exclusively in the second half of March.
the amazing thing, if you want to look locally both in New York and in Tennessee, we'll start off here in Tennessee. The SEC, Tennessee is ranked sixth in the country. They're sixth actually in the SEC. They're 8-5. They play at Texas A&M this weekend on ESPN. It's a 12 o'clock Eastern, 11 o'clock Central game. Uh, Tennessee is just one of a boatload of SEC teams that are going to make it into the tournament. I think you mentioned before there's something like 12 or 13 teams from the SEC could make it in. Nine SEC teams are in the top 25 out of the total 25. Nine out of 25, which is
Incredible.
it's unbelievable. Uh,
Yeah.
that Rutgers this Sunday plays at home against USC. Rutgers had a pretty good. I guess you'd have to say they had a pretty good West Coast swing. Going 1-1.
Yeah, there's all of the teams are doing their West Coast swings. They're either playing USC and UCLA or Oregon and Washington. Rutgers is playing the Pacific Northwest teams. Most of the teams in the Big Ten that have gone out there have gone 0-2. So Rutgers coming back 1-1 is actually a pretty good trip.
They're 6-10 in conference, 14th in the conference, so they're right now on the cusp of making the tournament. And I think if they
But they
win,
have a two-game lead right now
I
because
think if they win
two of the
Sunday, they can
teams
lock
that
in.
are below them are Northwestern and Washington, which they have tiebreakers over. So
Now,
right now, if they beat USC on Sunday, I think they're pretty much a lock
yeah,
to be in the Big.
they beat USC on Sunday. Also, they'll be back to 500 at 14-14.
Ten.
We know they're not going to make unless they have a miracle run in the tournament, which anything is possible. We know they're not going to make the NCAA's. They probably, if they finish over 500, will be invited to the NIT. And then you mentioned over the last couple of broadcasts about this Fox tournament, Fox Sports
Pound.
will tournament out in Las
Yeah.
Vegas. Certainly, having Harper and Bailey on their team is possibly the second and third draft picks or third and fourth draft picks in the NBA draft this year. They would be something worth TV. So they should be some sort of postseason.
Yeah.
Then Sunday at the Garden, University of Connecticut comes in to play the St. John's Red Storm. First place in the Big East, 14-2, 23-4 overall. They're ranked 10th in the country.
Mhm.
A win this weekend, that gets a 12 o'clock game also on Fox. If they win this game, they clinch a share of the Big East title. Uh,
Yep.
right now, they're projected as being a third seed in the tournament. Certainly, if they go on another run, or continue their run, and manage to win the Big East tournament, there's a possibility they could get into being ranked eighth or seventh in the country at the end of that, and maybe make it into a second seed and certainly a second seed in the Eastern Regional. So,
Yeah, absolutely. St. John's, a huge game Sunday. I mean, like we talked about before, they're playing. They lose, they're most likely a 4 or 5 seed in the NCAA tournament. They win, you're looking at a 2 or 3 seed. Now, a 2 or 3 seed gets you if you win your first two games and you get to the Eastern Regionals. That's in Newark.
right.
There'll be uh, there'll be a lot of people coming across the river for those games, and St. John's basically would be like a home court at Newark.
Yeah. So we'll see what happens with that. One note to mention about college football: the Big Ten, and the SEC commissioners met last couple of days, and it looks like, as you mentioned, it looks like we're going to 16 teams in the playoffs,
No
and
buys.
no buys, and the Big Ten and the SEC are adamant about the seeding being the final poll, not
Yeah.
like Arizona State or Boise State getting in because they've won their championships and having Tennessee and Ohio as eights and nines. That's absurd. And the one to the other side of that is they're going to change. I think they're going to mandate that they each get four teams in.
Yeah.
This-
SEC will get 4 teams out of the 16. The Big Ten will take 4.
And
It
the
looks like, and they're talking about, and by the way, this was the pre-meeting. The real meeting is coming up this week. They got everything set. Now that all the rest of the commissioners are coming this week, and they're going to tell the other commissioners, here's what's going down.
I-
But what's what something we've been talking about, which looks like it might happen, is there won't be a Big Ten tournament or a Big Ten conference championship game or an SEC conference championship game. Looks like they're going more towards a model where it'll be 1 versus 4, 2 versus 3. You're going to be basically playing games to get to the college football playoff.
And the SEC is going to go now. They play 8 conference games. They're going to move to 9 conference games, to get to like make up for the championship thing. Uh, Look, the first year of doing this football playoffs with the 12 teams was excellent. The
Mm-hmm.
seeding screwed it up a little bit. Now that
Mm-hmm.
that's technically fixed, I don't have a problem with 16 teams, nobody getting a bye. Um, you can do 3 hours on whether a bye is good or bad for you, and we're not going to do that here. Um, but I think it put some interest into the college playoffs. I think it waited too long to start. I think it's got to start a little bit earlier. And needless to say, the college can't go up against the NFL, so they're gonna have to work that out. Um, if they can work that out, I thought the championship game was too late in the year. I thought it should have been earlier. When games end, get it started. Don't have these 3-week layoffs and things like that, and don't worry so much about Rose Bowls and Cotton Bowls. People will watch college football wherever you put it on.
Yeah.
And
So the championship game this year, I think, was something around January 13th, or
right.
somewhere like mid-January. So I think that's like that should keep. You have to back everything up to
Right.
start the season, so you can end the season like January 15th.
It makes sense. And I mean, the football is getting longer. Pro football is getting longer, and it's only a matter of time before they add the 18th game. This year the Super Bowl was the week before uh,
Yeah.
President's Day weekend. If they add that 18th game, the Super Bowl will end up being on President's Day weekend, which will eliminate all the Monday morning blahs because because Sunday night will be a Saturday night, basically, for most of the country being off on the
Right.
holiday.
Be a federal holiday the day after the Super
But
Bowl.
I just think that that's got to work. But there's a lot more to be discussed, and we'll find out what goes on with that. Um, we talked about this briefly. We'll get into it now. You know, the biggest problem that the 4 major sports have, baseball, football, basketball, and hockey, is the All-Star game. For some reason, the All-Star games are just terrible. The only real watchable All-Star game in those 4 professional sports is baseball, because it's a regular
Mhm.
game. All right. But baseball's All-Star game has gotten crappy over the last few years because of the stupid pajamas that they wear at the game. Major League Baseball stopped that, and they said, okay, everybody's going back to wearing their normal, regular uniform, home and away uniforms, depending upon which team you're on. So you'll see Yankee pinstripes if it's an American League Park. You'll see white Dodgers if it's in a National League Park. The white Dodger uniform with the blue Dodgers, of course, which I think is a really classy uniform. You'll see that. You might see it in Japanese, but you'll see that. Um, uh, but like the NBA basketball, they went on this first team to 40 this week. I had no interest in watching it. I don't think it did very well in the ratings. Um, NFL has got the flag football, so much for the Pro Bowl, and
Yeah,
nobody's
yeah.
really watching that. But the NHL came up with a great thing, the Four Nations Cup. Sweden, Finland, United States, and Canada. They just finished it. Canada won last night in Boston in overtime, 3-2. It was as exciting as a Stanley Cup game, as a gold medal game could be. Connor McDavid scoring the overtime goal. Uh, it was phenomenal, and it made there was a little bit more spice to this because of all the political nonsense, which we won't get into, going on between Canada and the U.S.
It was a really good move by the NHL. I mean, you get people like, I don't watch hockey. I watch hockey this week. And I'm sure I'm not the only one. There's a lot of people this week that don't watch hockey that watched that game last night where the United States lost to Canada in overtime in a very exciting game. That was a very exciting game.
Because if you watch a basketball All-Star game, nobody plays defense. One team wins
Right.
191 to 185. When they used to have the Pro Bowl, nobody blitzed. You couldn't blitz. You couldn't block. You
Right.
couldn't do anything like that.
The game last night was a
Look what
regular hockey game. Those guys were busting themselves. Both teams wanted to win. Like they were, somebody could have broken their leg. They were going to do anything they could to win a game.
Well, look what happened in the first Canadian-US game, right? Now, again, the political tensions helped that, but the game, they dropped the gloves before the puck was dropped. There were three fights in the first
Yeah,
9
9 seconds. There was 3 fights in
fights,
9 seconds.
hockey fights. You don't see hockey fights anymore. This is an international type game, like an Olympic type game setting. Hockey fights.
Yeah.
And the great
Those guys were serious. I mean,
and
real
and
serious.
and don't forget tonight they're back in their uniforms. The American guys and the Finnish guys and the Swedish guys and the Canadian guys are all back in the same.
Right.
And they do that every 4 years when with the Olympics and but this was more intense and this is only going to get better once the Ukraine Russian war ends. Russia will be added into this mix. I don't know if they'll end up with another country to make it six, or they'll just pick the five and somebody gets a bye. However they do that. You came up with a great idea for the Major League Baseball All-Star game, although I don't think it needs tweaking, but I think it's worth mentioning it and bring it up. Tell what.
Yeah. There's a way, All-Star game instead of being that Tuesday, just like do like the NHL did. I mean, it's a great idea. Take the week off, get yourself the Japanese team, the American team, the Dominican team, the Venezuelan team. Get four nations together and have the same type of tournament. Play 4 games, 3 games, whatever, and crown a champion on Friday or Saturday of All Star Week, and then start playing again on Monday.
Now the problem with that is that what you've done is you basically no, and I'm being serious. You've basically eliminated the World Baseball Classic by doing what you're doing.
You're diminishing the World Baseball Classic,
But
definitely.
does anybody really care about the World Baseball Classic? I mean,
Well,
because it's
it
a
might help the
domestic
major
event.
leagues because I think every owner in the major leagues is scared about the WBC because that takes place in February and March before the season starts.
Right.
They're less inclined to be scared in the middle of the season because everybody's in shape. They're all in mid-season form, and I mean, guys are going to get hurt, maybe pitchers particularly, but I, I think it's something that the owners probably won't have a problem with.
I think it's I think it's an interesting idea to try. At least we'll try once and see how people go for it.
Rob Manfred's going to want it because that's another dollar he can make.
Well, yeah, and let's face it. I don't know. I mean, could the NFL? No, see, football is hard to do because it's just too violent. I mean, even though hockey is, and they're not going to take all the time after. But who knows? Maybe you see, Major League Baseball turn around and say, okay, let's instead of All-Star game, let's play, the AL West, an All-Star AL West team, an All-Star AL Central team, and they play each other and something like that. But there's no doubt that this uh, Four Nations Cup worked spectacularly.
Oh,
So
it helped the NHL. I don't think there's any doubt about that. I think you're gonna, the ratings of NHL hockey, TV wise, will definitely there'll be a bump here.
there is something about a hockey game. Last night it would seem to be more intense than a gold medal game. It certainly was as intense as the seventh game of a Stanley Cup.
Mhm.
And you just saw the absolute, you know, the way the team when McDonald scored, the way Canada just
David,
erupted. McDavid goes,
David, yeah.
goddamn, it just erupted. Um, there was one person who said this was a bad idea, and I think it's going to be good. So we'll see. I mean, it's certainly now going to be in. That's the way hockey's going to be. That's the hockey thing. So now,
Oh yeah.
baseball, football, and basketball are going to try to do something to get people. I don't think people watch the basketball game. I think it starts too late. It's on a Sunday night, and there's nothing to it. I mean, this last thing, I understand what they tried to do to try to get more, nobody wants to see 191, 158. So they made four teams. Whoever gets the 41st, not a bad idea. It's like playing in the playground, 21 wins, but you know, it was something. It was something, but NBA has to do something and NFL has to do something. I didn't watch 1 minute of the skills contest in the NFL.
Now, hats off to hockey. I noticed at the end, giving out the trophies and everything was Gary Bettman, and I don't know the name of the guy, but he's the Players Association. So you got to tip your cap to the Players Association. Obviously, they had to approve this, and they
Right.
really came up with it.
I didn't watch at the end. I turned it off right after the end. But when I introduced Gary Bettman, was he booed?
No,
Gary Bettman's been booed all over the place. He's always booed.
yeah, well, they didn't really introduce him. I think they just introduced that the player of the game is McDavid. He skated over. The Players Association guy gave him his box
Right.
or whatever his award was. He shook hands with him and Gary Bettman and then skated back. And then they gave a tournament MVP to another Canadian guy, and the same thing. He went over and shook Gary. Gary Bettman had the box. He gave him the box, shook his hand, and
Again,
then shook.
doing this type of format, all right? Um, people were buying the USA hockey jersey.
Oh
People,
yeah, definitely.
they were buying the jersey. They don't buy the All-Star jerseys. All-Star jerseys feel like a ripoff. A country, you buy a jersey that says USA on it. You
Yeah.
don't have to wear it to a hockey game. You can wear it to a neighborhood barbecue. It's USA. You
Oh
know what I'm?
yeah.
There's
Oh, yeah.
nothing against wearing USA. Great, great thing.
I have a USA soccer shirt.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, anything with USA on it is, like you said, you can wear it anywhere.
Anything else you think of?
That's all we have, Matt. I think
I
it
got,
was a good broadcast today. Good.
I got one last thing, and this thing struck me a little bit because of my 11 years in Pittsburgh and everything like that. Anybody who's a hockey fan certainly knows the name Mike Emmerich, but if you also know that name, you also know the name Mike Lang. 46 years, the play-by-play voice of the Pittsburgh Penguins. Mike Lang died on Wednesday at the age of 76. He's the guy who gave the title, It's a Hockey Night in Pittsburgh. He's the guy, if you went to a Penguins game, as I did for 11 years as a season ticket holder, when the game was over and as you started to get up and the Penguins won and you started to get up to leave, you would hear one last thing from Mike Lane. Ladies and gentlemen, Elvis has left the building. He came up with sayings that you wouldn't believe. You can go. He beat him like a rented mule. Slap me, silly Sydney. He smoked him like a cheap cigar. He was the guy, and for 46 years, he broadcast all five Stanley Cups for the Penguins. He became extremely close when he came into the league with Mario Lemieux. He became extremely close with Jaromir Jagr as well as Sidney Crosby. In fact, um, it was Jagr who actually gave him the idea of the Elvis left the building thing, and he thanked him when his number 68 was retired in February of last year. It's one of those things as we get older, people pass and we're always taken back by it because, we know we're getting old, but we don't realize it until something like this happens. So, uh, Mike Lang will
Yeah.
be missed and, it's just, I guess, a good way to end a good broadcast.
Yeah. It's a tough loss for Pittsburgh in particular. It's you know, although Bill Hillgrove didn't pass away, the Steelers play-by-play announcer, he did retire 2 years ago, and so it's the passing of the guard, I guess you'd say, to some of the broadcasters over there. Um, yeah, he'll be missed for sure. 46 years as the Penguins broadcast. I
Yep.
mean, you're talking. I mean, if you're talking like Vin Scully type of a career
Yeah, he
right
did a
here.
few years. He did a few years on television as well, but he was always the radio guy. And when you'd walk into the arena, you'd hear that it's a hockey night in Pittsburgh, and everybody knew that phrase. Everybody knew
Yeah.
that phrase, and he was also one of the nicest guys around. My son-in-law said he bumped into him once at a gas station. And they ended up talking hockey, and they ended up going next door to the diner and having a cup of coffee and a cigarette. That's the kind of guy Mike Lang was. So he'll be missed. He'll be missed. Time moves on. I think that's it. I would like to thank
Joe,
folks for listening. We
so
got
have a great weekend.
Yep, nothing exciting except for St. John's, Rutgers, and Tennessee basketball this weekend.
A lot of NCAA hoops this weekend. Big
Uh,
games.
Knicks came back last night and won against the Bulls. Now this weekend they play, well, tonight they play the Cavaliers and then they play the Celtics on Sunday. So we'll get to NBA basketball next week a little bit. We'll give Elliot a homework assignment to watch some of the games. We actually got him to watch hockey, so there's hope for this boy yet. And certainly as we move into the end of February and the beginning of March, we'll have much more to talk about with the Mets and the Yankees as Major League Baseball inches closer to opening day.
Have a good one.
Have a good one. Good night, everybody. Bye bye.